Now Gina's moves lately. She's been in the paper a bit. The word on the decline when they had that 22% rise was that multiple parties were trying to get off market very quickly a 19.9% stake in Delta. The requirement for Idemitsu to vote in accordance with the recommendation of the majority of the board. That means they're still on the market.
They've got a bit of history, some of the people within Delta, to Gina.
Righto, g'day, Money Miners, 15th of June, Thursday. And I'm in another position today. I'm trying out traps.
Back on the desk, mate.
I know. It's I'll take it whenever maybe I've got to give you rostered days off each week just so I can get a little chance on the desk.
That's it. We'll swing through it, eh?
Someone commented on the plant in the background, reckon it needs updating, but
Maybe a water.
we'll persevere. Right. Now, today we're going to do a bit of lithium speculation, potential M&A, bit of word on the decline coming up. So
Deals keep on coming, don't they?
yeah, Gina's getting in on it. Delta definitely in the mix.
Yeah, a few
And
names to mention there, but we've got a bit of news in the gold space to skim over first.
Yes,
What's
we'll get
happening there,
into
matey?
that. You never know. We might get a surprise phone call at some point. Now, first up to Grey. So they put out an updated mineral resource statement. So their Hemi mineral resource grew by a casual 1 million ounces. So they're up to 9.5 million ounces for the Hemi deposit. So their global measured and indicated resource is now 8.1 million ounces. But remember, JD, it is refractory.
Yeah, we learnt all about that, hey? Not quite as easy. You won't be
We
expecting
did.
those
Thank
95.
you, Mr. Agricola, for hooking us up there.
That was a beauty. And a bit on the specky end.
love a
Your
good-
favourites, mate?
I love a good specky. So
What'd you see?
I noticed old Brightstar have commenced their 5,000 metre drill program at their Menzies Gold project. Don't mind the little Menzies area, targeting extensions of previous high-grade intercepts. That's a great strategy from Alex Avira, targeting high-grade. Great thinking. How do you reckon he come up with that one?
Genius, hey?
Mate, you are
Game
unreal,
changer.
Alex. That is brilliant, mate. Look forward to hearing the results. Hastings, JD.
No,
Bit
so
of-
no actual news here, but
A lot of
they are
downward pressure.
copping it lately, aren't they?
Very much so. So, well, they're down 10% today, and they put out that staged approach, stage 1, stage 2 approach to how they're going to go into production.
And that was on the back of a cost blowout. It wasn't just a
Yeah.
choice they made willy-nilly. They had I think it was a 40% rise in the cost of what the project was going to cost them. So they've gone with that process, that sort of method of doing the first bit, getting some cash in the door, and then using that cash to build out an expansion, right?
And, well, since that announcement, they are down 41%
Jesus.
and continuing to to decline. So, yeah, one to watch there. No news, but still downward pressure. Right, JD and on to Gina.
Yeah, so I'm not sure we've actually spoken about Gina all that much since we...
Definitely not in the lithium space yet. This seems to be a new thing, but this, I guess, this Gina news has a lot of links to other bits of news, and we're going to try and tie it all together. Right, JD, give us the initial scope of what's out today.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a surprise to us, right? But it really shouldn't be they're sort of smaller players, but if you read the announcements, you have Legacy Iron Ore, Hawthorn Resources, and of course the company that Gina runs through Hancock, her privately held business. So they're all involved in this, and they've actually had a bit of a JV. They've been working together for some time now, but that was previously only on magnetite, so iron ore, what they're working on. So the kicker today is that this now involves critical minerals. So we're talking lithium, and obviously hoping if they can get any nickel or copper, anything like that on that Mount Ida corridor, which explains why we're going to talk about Delta as well, doesn't it?
Exactly. So this tenement we're talking about, this Mount Bevan, it butts up against Mount Ida.
Yeah. So for those wondering, we'll chuck up a map on the YouTube, but this is roughly 100 or so kilometres west of Leonora. So almost in the middle of WA, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So, okay, let's go over the parties involved, who's got what. So I guess you said there's this Mount Bevan JV. So this Gina's gone into a JV with Hawthorn and Legacy Iron Ore. So via Hancock. So Hancock's, as you said, Gina's privately held iron ore business.
Yeah, and to give people a bit of scope on these, Legacy, last time we checked, Legacy Iron Ore were capped at roughly 130 million. Hawthorn Resources capped at roughly 40. And they've both had pretty good days, haven't they?
Yeah, so they're up 21%. So you've got Legacy Iron Ore. So they're backed by NMDC.
Yeah, and we'll talk about them later. So they are in Indian Public Enterprise, who's the biggest producer of iron ore in India and essentially a sort of steel maker.
Yeah, okay, and this will all tie into this, what the lithium thematic's doing globally as well.
The geopolitics, which we'll touch on later.
So then you got Delta Lithium. They're up 15% today. Considering this deal, they had a deal done yesterday. So they're capped at 340 million. So look, we did talk about them yesterday. They had a big investment from a Japanese group. What Flano referred to as a wicked deal.
A wicked deal. I think that was the official terminology.
And we'll get right into that more so later. But that was at they bought 15% at a 7.5 premium.
Yeah, we'll unpack that later. And just worth mentioning as well that they've got a bit of history, some of the people within Delta, to Gina, don't they?
Well, you're more up on it?
So David Flanagan
sold Atlas Iron too.
Yeah, he ran for a long time Atlas Iron, which is now a subsidiary of Gina's business. Yeah. So there's a relationship there as well.
Okay, so and then here's another one to throw in the mix, possibly, and we'll link it up later. But Voltaic Strategic Resources. So they've had a real. So they're up 360% since the end of April because they've hit 58 and 50 meters of pegmatites, waiting on assays.
Yeah,
and their project is adjacent to the Delta Lithium's Yinathara project. So the Yinathara is the lot thicker than Mount Ida, but lower grade. So
and it's a bit further north, isn't it?
Yeah,
from the Mount Ida project.
Yeah, but it definitely brings in that there's another lithium play there, and this is going to all, I guess, tie back into what is Gina up to.
Yeah, so we touched on Voltaic probably a month or two ago when they had those sort of exciting results, and then they went your usual straight into a capital raising and. Yeah, regardless, it's exciting to see what they come out with those assays in a couple of weeks' time.
I think it's been, maybe it's because you were in Africa, JD. Lithium seemed to go off the pedal a bit. It just feels like with these couple of announcements, the interest certainly is coming back. It's getting a spike, I think.
That's all
they
it
know
takes,
you're back, mate. They just needed you back in the country.
We told them to keep it on hold, didn't we? So
very much.
Get into it. So,
geez, I'm liking this side. It's bloody good. Yeah,
a lot more eye contact, eh?
Yeah, very much so. Right, let's go into the deal, JD. So let's start with the Hancock deal. And we'll further expand on Delta's one from yesterday. So the Hancock deal, right? It's an earn-in. It's a JV. And you can probably go into the weeds about it and explain how this JV works. Take it away, Cobbler. Mount Bevan.
Yeah, so we've got the tenements there held between Hawthorn as well as the other party, Legacy Iron Ore. And similar to their magnetite deal, they're joint venturing in. So the headline number is that they're going to pay $4 million at least upfront. And then it's sort of staged as they have certain spend commitments. So they'll spend a certain amount, $4 million to start with, then another $5 million, then another $7 million. And each of those spending packages, if they're done within a certain time, gives them another certain percentage of the comprised land. So there's a final payment as well that won't get them any additional percentage of the final business, but another $10 million at the end if they come out with a 5 million tonne resource at 1.2%, which isn't too unreasonable, is it?
No, well, that's what Mount Ida is. So Mount Ida is 1.2% from memory. Is it 13 million tonnes, something like that, 1.2%. So,
and I think Essential, who we'll touch on later, we've spoken about in the past, I think they had 13 or 40 million tonnes at a similar sort of grade.
Yeah.
So
I guess the earn in there, so if Gina spends $5 million on exploration within 12 months, she gets 7.5%. If she spends $7 million on drilling within 12 months, gets another 20%. And then to deliver a PFS after all the drilling and exploration within 18 months, that's going to cost around at least $10 million. She'll get an extra 16%, and that'll take her take Hancock up to 51% of that JV.
Yep, and then to round that out, Legacy Iron will have a bit over 29%. and Hawthorn will have a bit under 20% to round off what the final ownership looks like.
So, and as we said, Mount Bevan sits along this Mount Ida fault. Looks like the tenements, as we've seen, abut next to each other. The Delta's Mount Ida and Mount Bevan, right next to each other up that lithium corridor there. So now let's have a chat. Let's have a chat about Delta, JD. So look, from yesterday, their share price went up to sort of where that because they raised it a 7.5% premium, that 15% shares they issued.
Yeah.
So they got to that price. Now they're up another 12% today. So you could, I guess we're going along the lines that this is due to this possible link with
and
Gina.
Prior to that, they'd had a good little run up as well on the sort of suspicions that people were buying. There's a bit of word on the decline, wasn't there?
Well, I think, what was it, end of May.
Yeah, they kicked up quite a bit, and there was rumours that there was parties circling wanting to sort of buy, what you call a blocking stake in the business.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to find the bloody date, but it was the end of May. They went up 22% in one day. So
yeah, I think it was the 19th of May, looking back at the chart, that they had that huge rise on. Now let's unpack this deal they did. So like you said, it was done at roughly a 7.5% premium. They issued 15% of their shares on issue, which is the max you can do without having to call in a shareholder vote. Now this has all gone to Idemitsu, which is a subsidiary of the huge Japanese petroleum and energy business. So you kind of expect or suspect that they've got relationships with, car makers and the likes back in Japan. So it makes it a sort of strategic deal. And also the shares will be tied up for 18 months, so voluntary escrow. And there was another kicker in there as well.
Well, this was pointed out to us by Mr. Dalio, which was, thanks for calling in, Mr. Dalio. You shall remain anonymous. Now, and this goes into how what this 15% take means in terms of control. So you can see in the announcement, investment agreement and change of control undertaking in the second line, the requirement for Idemitsu to vote in accordance with the recommendation of the majority of the board. So that means that strategically they're still on the market. Delta, like they're not. This isn't a blocking stake, and I guess we'll go why, and we'll probably use MinRes and Essential Metals as an example. So if you look at that situation, MinRes held 19.55% of Essential Metals, and IGO Tianqi put a takeover offer in. MinRes acquired the shares after that. I think it was in the 11th hour. I think they acquired them on a couple
days before.
Yeah. So then they acquired this 19.55% and then voted against the takeover deal, which and that deal needed 75% approval to get over the line.
So it's all gone a bit quiet on that front. We're not quite sure what the plans are, but it just goes to show your point that if you have more than 10% stake, in that case it was 19.55.
Yep.
In this case 15%, and in this case they're going to be voting along the lines of whatever the board wants. They can block a deal. The board, that is, can block a potential deal, or they can put a bit of sway behind a potential deal.
But then I guess MinRes's position in Essential pretty much took them off the market for other offers because they're like, well, MinRes are going to vote against it anyway. Yep. So that takes the opportunity away to get more takeover offers. Whereas in this situation, because Idemitsu vote with the board, they both act as a blocking stake if the board want to vote against an offer, or they're still open for business for someone else to come in and offer. And as I said, linking back to the word on the decline when they had that 22% rise was that multiple parties were trying to get off market very quickly a 19.9% stake in Delta.
Yeah, so it gives quite a bit of power to David Flanagan and the board and the team there. So it's little wonder he was quoted as saying it was a wicked deal that's virtually unprecedented.
Wicked deal, right. JD, let's get into the lithium market, and then we're going to finish off with what we think Gina's up to here.
Yeah, so I think this is really interesting. We'll have a good chat about what's going on in the lithium market. So a bit of history, we saw this huge rise in 17, 18, then the lithium prices cooled off as people realised, this EV revolution is still years away. And then the sort of mania we saw throughout 2021 and then carrying on into 2022, the lithium price just went bananas again. And we saw this with the margin that the companies who were lucky enough to be in production and lucky enough to or, it's smart enough to survive the downturn were just making bumper profits, just crazy profits. The margins were insane. Just look at Pilbara for an example of that.
But then you look at the other end, as you said, core lithium probably don't have as good of a deposit, but they still made big money off that.
Yeah, and beyond the money they're making, the valuation and the premium, the multiple that the market is ascribing is just phenomenal. So the lithium price has cooled off since then. So late 2022, we saw it cool off, and into 23, and now it's sort of steadied a bit. So I think it's worth remembering that lithium isn't priced like gold, like nickel or copper. It's not just one big liquid market. You can think of it more similar to perhaps like a uranium, where there's long-term deals, there's offtake agreements, there's battery makers and auto, manufacturers who are going into long-term arrangements with these mining companies, and often in case providing finance up front.
So they'll pay what they think it's worth, considering everything else that's in the deal.
Yeah, so there's a number of factors, and it's just not a big liquid market being priced on a daily sort of basis. That's why it's so hard just Googling what the bloody lithium price is.
Yeah.
You get so many different outcomes. Not only that, but you've got, lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide, you've got your spodumene, different percentage grades. There's lots of different prices as well. So getting into what really drives the lithium price, you've obviously got China. So almost all the lithium in the world goes to China. It's processed there, whether that's, a carbonate, hydroxide, or being converted in China. It's all driven, and it's little wonder that's happening, because that's where the majority of batteries are manufactured and where the vast majority of cars are built as well. So this one's really stood out to us, hasn't it, Matty? Because the Chinese aren't really involved so much in this deal, are they?
No, well, it appears like, as I said, you've got the Japanese investment into Delta, but then you've got the
Indian alignment,
the Indian connection on the Gina side. So, and probably speaks to where Japan, India, and like Europe as well are in terms of, like, there's a rush for all of these manufacturers to secure supply. So I think, can we infer, or guess we've been also someone else's point of view was that they're behind the eight ball. So they're scrambling to secure supply of this lithium material.
Yeah, so you've got the major automakers around the world. And like we said, a lot of them are in China, but, Toyota, there's a number of other Asian countries that are big producers of cars, and they've had a bit of a different strategy for a while. So Toyota, as an example, they were huge. They've been producing hybrid vehicles for over 20 years, and they were also huge on hydrogen. The Japanese in general, they were providing energy for a lot of their public transport, the buses around the cities, through hydrogen. And Toyota, just in the last couple of days, we've seen that having a bit of a change in tech. They're now going to go hard into, what we think of more electric vehicles. So that's going to involve a lot of lithium and other, components that are used in these batteries. And that's going to involve, like we said, the need for offtake agreements. They're going to need to secure that supply. So I think companies in India also need to do this, and to perhaps a lesser extent, companies like Volkswagen, they're not completely set in this either. So we're going to see a bit of action there.
Yeah. So I guess Japan and India look like they're going to start getting involved in this M&A side of things.
Yeah, and it's interesting. India, you mentioned there, we've seen a lot of, relationship building. We've seen Anthony Albanese, our Prime Minister, meeting with Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India. Also Gina meeting with him just in the last week or so. So that's quite a telling sign. Obviously, Legacy Iron Ore have that relationship with India as well. And then, Japan, like we touched on. So
I think there's still a bit of uncertainty about what this long-term lithium price is going to do, isn't it? Because primarily all the lithium coming out of China that's being produced, not the stuff that's being processed, the stuff that's being produced is coming from the lepidolite sources, which were the point of conjecture, I think, was it a year and a bit ago, it's probably 2 years ago, when, Goldman's had the very low price for
the real bearish
lithium,
outlook.
and then you had Morgan's on the other end of the spectrum. I think they were about 85% different what their long-term outlook for, and this was, a lot of it was dependent on this lepidolite coming out of China, which is a lot harder to process.
And also a lot harder, more expensive, and, more fossil fuels are used in that. So it's not as environmentally friendly, which in a sense kind of defeats the purpose in building an electric vehicle. So completely agree with what you said. A lot of analysts just have different views on where the lithium price is going from here. And it's worth mentioning that these commodities, they're really priced at that marginal cost of the producer. So kind of where you see demand meeting supply. And it's kind of hard to imagine that that's not lower than where it is today, where the price is today, because we just have to mention again the margins that some of these companies were making. It was huge. You know, your Pilbara's and the like were making lots and lots of money, and now they're potentially going on M&A sprees. And it makes me also think of a presentation we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. So we spoke about BHP and Mike Henry giving a talk at the Bank of America conference in Barcelona, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. And what really stood out to us at the time was that he said the cost curve isn't steep enough. So implying there's a lot of lithium projects out there and they're not going to be that differentiated. So it was, from his point of view, harder to build a competitive advantage in the lithium business because you just can't get a large scale, you know, phenomenally cheaper asset. So that was super interesting and stood out to us.
Yeah, no, BHP don't operate under uncertainty, really, do they?
They
must be certain over copper because they're going all in on that.
Yeah, they've sort of picked their commodities, and lithium's just not one of them, unlike what we're seeing today.
Now, Gina's moves lately. She's been in the paper a bit. She's, you know, I don't know if it's trying to change the image after the whole netball saga or something, but she appears to be making a bit of a push. So whether like a lot of these news articles and stuff were a bit of a precursor to a bit of M&A activity.
They're sort of issues we'll have to deal with down the track, Matty, when we've got, you know, $30 billion in the bank. But how the public perceives you is a world we don't quite operate in at the moment. But you're dead right, and it's not by accident that she's been in the media lately. We read a week or two ago in the West, there was a magazine titled the 100 Aussies who helped shape Western Australia. And she was, of course, in there. Her father was in there. But on every other page, there was a sponsorship from Roy Hill from Hancock Prospecting. You know, the headline was Roy Hill presents the 100 most influential WA people over our history.
Look, it's good to see the West Australian is sticking to their good ethical brand there.
You're dead right. And on top of that, she was also awarded the West Australian of the Year?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so just a couple of weeks ago, West Australian of the Year. And
who would you pick ahead of her? Oh, that's a tough one, eh?
I mean, there's a lot of people in a lot of different fields. It doesn't have to be a business person. There's so many people doing a good job at whatever they're doing out there. So I don't know.
Imagine if Raoul consolidates Leonora. Geez, he'd be in the running, you reckon?
Well, I wonder if it had to do with how much tax she pays from the gargantuan profits she's making up there. But we'll see.
I think the overall thing with Gina, that if you there's all the paper and WA year, all that. It's all a bit of smoke and mirrors, I think, JD. But the overarching thing is that, as we mentioned before, word on the decline, she wants to start a lithium business. So she is dipping a toe in. You've got Minres are well into it.
Yep.
So Chris Ellison, well, probably Andrew Forrest and Chris Ellison, they're Gina's biggest competitors in the mining industry for who's got the most cash as individuals. So I think she is, from what I hear, she's wanting to dip her toe significantly into lithium. So
yeah, she's not short of a buck, but it's interesting where she's come in. She's come in really early stage. You know, exploration really is where she's come in, and you look at the likes of the players in WA. You know, Liontown, what's their cap? Almost $6 billion now. Like, even for her, that's a lot of money, and they've already pushed back 3 deals. So whether it's a smaller bite by consolidating the area in which the Mount Ida project is, we'll sort of have to keep our eyes peeled.
Well, I found the interesting thing it wasn't on the Hawthorn announcement, or it was in that announcement where they said, was it Hawthorn gets the right to purchase 75% of the product?
I think you're right. I think it was Legacy Iron.
I think it was at Legacy. So Legacy, it said Legacy Iron have the right to purchase 75% of the product.
Yeah, of the end product. Now, I think Hawthorn then in turn got the right to buy another 10%, and the remaining 15 would go to Hancock. Now, we need to explore a bit more into that one because obviously lithium is a product where there could be a lot of value dependent on the level of end product you get to, whether you're producing a spodumene product or whether, because that's what the team at Delta are looking to do and get into production by next year, or whether they're going downstream a bit more and sort of trying to identify where that value will ascribe to and what legacy are trying to achieve with this.
Well, I think the biggest issue with going downstream usually is capital. So that's why even Liontown, as big as it is still doing a study to do the downstream component. It hasn't been yet approved, but
capital as well as technical ability. It's not easy. It's a real chemical sort of process, and none of the guys have really done it in Australia. That's why you're seeing issues, like you said, capital issues building the things as well. And then it's why we've kind of seen some M&A, like the Live and Allchem deal that we saw, trying to bring the two skill sets, the mining skill set together with the chemical processing skill set to build a more rounded mining and chemicals business.
Well, I know if you're looking for capital to go, if there's any way to go downstream in Australia, it has to usually, and with Australian investment, it has to usually involve someone like Gina or Chris Ellison.
Deep pockets,
Twiggy Forrest, like people with deep pockets that can, wear the brunt of it initially. But you look at how much you lose off the bottom line, especially exporting a DSO, like how much they'd be losing, whereas the long-term margin they'd get out of having a downstream processing facility. Look, this is spitballing, but that condition being in there was very forward-looking about the 75% that Legacy could purchase. So whether Legacy then becomes the processing arm of Hancock, or Hancock take over Legacy who knows? But that's that definitely, I don't think it was in there by accident.
No, not at all. We've definitely got to do an episode on everything that's going on downstream and all the chatter we're hearing about, WA going to produce batteries. There's a lot to unpack there, so we're going to get to that one.
Well, and as you said, Gina's getting in early. Very early development. This is exploration. There's obviously Mount Ida are very close to the direct shipping point.
Yep.
But it's still a bit off, full nameplate production and everything. But obviously Liontown are the closest one. But is Gina going to go pay $6 billion to take over Liontown or something like that? That's pretty far fetched, especially with Albemarle already in the door. But it's a bit to watch. This is has this been the first bit where Gina sort of looked to dip the toe into lithium?
I think it is, and like we sort of touched on at the beginning of the episode, it shouldn't be a complete surprise. They've been speaking about this for a number of months now. They'd even mentioned it last year in some of the announcements from Hawthorn and from Legacy Iron Ore that they're looking to create a venture that's going to go after these critical minerals. So
and looking at the appreciation in Delta's share price, I think it's 70-odd%. I've got it written up here.
Yeah, I think you're dead right, 70-odd% over the past month or so.
Yeah, 70-odd% in the last couple, since I think end of April or something. So, the last player in this, I reckon, JD, that might start coming in the news, as we said, Voltaic Strategic Resources, VSR. So they're awaiting assays at their, what's that one called? Tea Tree project, TI Tree. So I'm going with Tea Tree. Tea Tree project, and which is adjacent to next to Yinathera, which is Delta's prospect. So they've hit, I think it was 58 and 50 metres worth of spodumene from the surface. Waiting on assays. Obviously, Yinathera is lower grade than Mount Ida, but a lot thicker. Seems to be a lot bigger scale. But look, is this? They've gone up, 300-odd%, 370%, I think.
Yeah, from a pretty low base. So, eyes peeled. And that's sometimes what it takes, something exciting, whether it's this deal, whether it's exploration results, to just breathe a bit of life back into it, hey?
Yeah, so this deal, I guess we've talked about today, is around that Mount Ida area and the interaction there between Gina and potentially Delta. But then just remember, they've got the Yinathera as well. You've got Voltaic next to there. So if someone like Gina is looking to dip a toe into lithium and starts with someone like Delta, we've seen, as I heard, there's a lot of interest in. You can see by the share price movement on no news.
Yeah.
you can see there's a potential play beyond that as well. So
Yeah,
we'll wait and see, Cobber. And we might have, let's just not confirm anything until it's sealed and delivered. These people are very busy, but we might have
A bit of a treat for the money miners.
We
eh?
might have a treat for the money miners, and a lot of this information we're discussing today could come from the horse's mouth tomorrow.
Love it.
Stay tuned, money miners.
Hoodaroo.
Hoodaroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation, and needs.